All right, can I get a motion to reconvene into open session, please?
So moved.
Second.
Great, roll call vote. Rochelle?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Philip?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Janice?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Elizabeth, aye. Ayes have it, motion carries. We are in open session. I want to make a slight adjustment. Sorry, this is like echoey. I want to make a slight adjustment to the agenda, which is to pull out consent agenda item H2 into action items so that we can do some discussion around it. Okay. First order of business is our celebration of excellence. I believe we have some folks from GDS here to talk about clubs and activities at GDS.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, look at that cute presentation.
Yes, would love to invite Sarah Mooney up along with Cole and Monona, and they are going to share around the clubs and activities that happen at GDS. So I'm going to hand it over to the team.
Turn that back on. No.
Yeah, push the little
Hold the
speaker
button until it goes red.
There you go.
All right. Thank you for having us. I am Sarah Mooney. I'm a special education teacher at Glacial Drumlin. I run several of these programs, but I've got Monona and Cole here to help me kind of share with you what we offer at GDS.
Our first club we're going to be talking about is Student Council. During Student Council, we value leadership, so supporting the development of student and advisor leadership skills and knowledge. Service, helping build a climate of caring and tolerance through volunteerism and service to help others. Student voice, promoting student council as the voice of student body and giving every student an opportunity to be heard. And engagement, encouraging students to become involved in school and community leadership and decision making. We meet once a month during advisory on Fridays. We provide school-wide leadership and participation through recognizing student contributions in clubs and activities by posting signs on student lockers. We celebrate staff birthdays by decorating their doorways, and we create whole building initiatives like donations, assembly celebrations, and dress-up days.
We also have a Students of Color Union that meets once a month as well. There are 76 current students in that group.
Is this thing on?
Yep, you're good.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
So let's tell them a little bit about Project Unify.
Project Unify is an organization that brings youth with and without intellectual disabilities together through education, sports, and related initiatives that promote acceptance, respect, and dignity for all students.
Correct. How many kids do we have currently signed up?
235.
That's amazing.
I like being a part of Project Unify because I get to meet a lot of friends when I play sports with them. We're going bowling next Friday.
Nice.
Who wants to come? I also have peer buddies in my classes that help me stay on task with me. I also will have friends that I eat lunch with. After we are done eating, we go outside and swing. Students in PU also help run the Snack Shack, which is basically like a grocery store, but low cost and, well, you get the point. We practice communication and money skills while working.
GDS Ski and Snowboard Club, 175 students. They go on several after school or off days. Yearbook. I also run yearbook, and we allow students to photograph, upload, edit photos, and then I usually keep my 8th graders who are familiar with the platform to help me actually edit and do layouts. This year we are doing with Empire, they're allowing us to create our own yearbook, so there's now a contest for best yearbook cover, so that's pretty exciting for us. Chess Club meets every other Wednesday or Mondays. 20 students are currently enrolled in that. GSA, 72 students. They meet after school on Wednesdays, and they have a really good outreach program where they bring in a lot of speakers and host a lot of inclusive activities. Science Olympia, there's 32 students involved in that. Mr. Mack is excellent hosting these STEM-based activities, and it's usually Wednesdays as well. Dungeons and Dragons, Mr. Mack is amazing. He has 79 students.
Wow, that is
Yes,
a lot of
that
kids
is-
playing D&D.
Absolutely. I can't speak to everything that the club does, but he has 79 really excited kids when he does host Dungeons and Dragons. As far as music goes, we have Sizzling Strings, so this is outside the school day, and they have 55 students. Jazz band, I think, is next, and yep, they have 25 students. Show choir, 50 students, and those are 2 seasons, so that number might fluctuate a little bit in the spring session. Athletics, do you want to talk real quick about some of the, okay. Some of the athletics that we provide to 7th and 8th graders, volleyball, we had 95 girls try out for volleyball. 130 students so far signed up for basketball, 80 students in track, and 50 in cross country. We have introduced 3 new clubs this year: the Disney Club, the school newspaper, and the AAPI Club.
Are Disney adults allowed in Disney Club?
Oh, it's the process for creating new clubs has been shared with students this year. So I'm going to kind of pass it off to Nona, who she and I worked together to get AAPI started.
So I want to say it was about 4 weeks ago. It was during the club sign-up week, and they have all the club sign-out sheets listed out in the lunchroom in the cafeteria. And I saw a lot of people signing up for Students of Color Union, but a lot of the Asian American students or Pacific Islander or Native Hawaiian students at our school don't feel like they really identify as a student of color. They feel like they identify as an Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander student. So I figured, as a member of the Samoan community, I'm involved in a lot of activities and clubs at our school. I know how things go, and I wanted to be the one to take the initiative. So I talked to Miss Mooney during a guided study or an advisory, I believe, and she gave me the form to fill it out. You basically just have to fill out how many students you'll think will be involved, why this club should be created, and I put down Miss Mooney as my club advisor, but then Miss Lee, who's one of our Asian American teachers at our school, showed interest in being a club advisor. So we have gotten together a couple guided studies, worked together to create meeting times. Just recently today, I think, we sent out a form an interest form to kids in our school. And I wrote a little section about it. So Asian American and Pacific Islander Club is a student-created organization that works to highlight the culture and diversity of Asian and Pacific cultures. We strive as a club to not only spotlight our similarities as a culture, but to educate people who don't share the same cultural values and practices. Anyone and everyone is welcome to join this club, and we're excited to see you there. So that was basically how I created that club.
Do we have any questions?
Yeah, what questions do we have? Do you have a question?
Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh.
I think it should be called Dungeons and More Dungeons.
Are you in that club?
No, I don't really sign up for D&D.
No, you don't. Do you do any D&D at all?
Well, I do Hoodoo Project Unify, and I'm thinking about starting 2 new clubs.
Oh yeah, which 2?
The Dinosaur Club
Oh yeah.
and the Universal Club.
Oh, as a rival to Disney?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that little rivalry in the middle school. What questions, other questions do we have? Yeah, Susan.
How does a student participate in student council?
The interest form comes out and students join us once a month. How Mr. Pierce and I have it set up is we break kids into months. So right now, October and November will meet and they kind of look at important dates, things that we want to identify, things that we want to celebrate, and then they organize things for those months. And then a new group of students comes out and creates things for January and February and things like that. So they can be as involved as they want with
okay.
school-wide and other initiatives.
Other questions? Eric, did you have anything?
Well, just a comment. Thank you to Sarah. Thank you for, seems like you're a club advisor in a lot of different clubs, so I appreciate that. But more importantly, not to discredit the work that you put in, the students for coming and speaking to us. We really appreciate that. It's always nice to hear directly from the students, so thank you for coming and talking to us about the clubs. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, Janice.
Yes, thank you to the students for coming in. Nona, thank you for creating a club. That's so cool. I'm very impressed.
Go ahead, Rochelle.
Well, I was going to ask, are you noticing more people signing up too? The more that you offer interesting clubs, you're getting more responses for more people to be involved?
For sure. Our drive is to try and find that connection so everyone feels connected to the school in some way, shape, or form. And so, yes, by giving more of these options, kids are finding that connection. And yeah.
Now I have a question. So you have 30 students signed up for your new club, and you said that you had to write on the form how many students you were expecting. So I'm kind of curious, like, how does that 30 fit with what you were expecting?
So actually, I'm not sure why that was on the slide because we haven't had anyone sign up the interest form since it was just sent out today.
Got it.
But that was kind of just like the expected amount.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure who put that on there, honestly.
And I think, if I'm not wrong, you had informal conversations with other people
I did.
about not feeling comfortable in one area, so wanting to form that group.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that you did that. Thank you again for coming. Other questions or comments? Thank you for coming. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Can we give a clap?
Sorry, I was ready to talk about, oh yeah, thanks to parents for driving. I love these celebrations of excellence. They're such a great addition to the board meeting. All right, next on the agenda is public appearances. We have no public appearances today. So we will move to the consent agenda, which, as a reminder, only has one item in it, which is the school board minutes from the meeting on October 9th and October 14th. Can I get a motion, please?
Does the motion need to not say as presented then? Or is that not critical? Usually we say I move to
Yeah.
as presented.
Or as amended?
As amended, I bet.
Sure.
Yeah, all right. I'll move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I second that.
Great. Any further discussion? All right, voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. All right, let's move down to action items. The first one is the 2024-2025 budget, and I believe Kristen has a presentation for us. So welcome, Kristen.
I feel like I blinked.
You might get off for a moment.
Yeah. I know, it came quick.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I feel like I blinked and it's October.
Yeah.
It was July and then it's October. So I'm here again today to talk about our budget. We're here finally to discuss our adjusted budget for the year, which is our final budget. The fiscal year did start July 1st, but there's a number of final variables that we are waiting for, but before we can finalize the budget. And this year we had some additional challenges that we had to work through before we could present this final budget. So tonight I wanted to just kind of give a recap of where we've been so far this year, give an example of a normal budget timeline for a school district, and then I'll get it into the meat of the adjusted budget and the tax levy mill rate, and talk a little bit about next steps for 25-26. So just to put this all in perspective, where we started this year, we had a significant decline in our fund balance due to some overspending and unbudgeted expenditures in the 23-24 year and the 22-23 year, leaving us with a 4% fund balance in Fund 10. The board did approve a balanced preliminary budget in June. However, we did find that we had the $4 million deficit in 23-24, leading us to believe that we really couldn't have a balanced budget with the results that we had from the 23-24 year. That resulted in a quick turnaround of a revised 24-25 budget that revealed a $1.8 million deficit, which would have left us with about a little under $1 million of fund balance at year end. And due to the depletion of the fund balance, we needed additional cash to pay operating expenses in October. That led to the board approving the operational loan of $7 million in September. Typical budget timeline is really a year-long process. We've reached the finish line. It's October, where we approved the adjusted budget and the tax levy certification. And then right away next month, we'll start the 25-26 budget work. So what's changed since September? Well, we got the third Friday count, our enrollment. We did summer hiring, so we have different people here than we had last year. We got our October aid certification and our final property valuation. We did do a thorough review of all expenditures. We removed some one-time expenditures that I didn't catch the first time. We added some unbudgeted expenditures that I didn't catch the first time, particularly with our retirement, because we used some forfeiture funds to fund retirement last year, so it didn't appear in our expenditures, but it's real expenditures that we will have moving forward because we don't have that forfeiture account anymore. And then we also had a technology lease that you have to record in the year. You record the revenue and the expenditure, and so that also is reflected. Some of the potential budget savings we looked at, some health insurance changes, did not move forward on that. We did remove all travel and conference expenditures from the budget. And we did have a number of staffing reductions through attrition, not necessarily less positions than last year in a number of cases. In some employment categories, we actually have more staff. We had just planned on adding more staff and actually didn't need additional staff because the enrollment wasn't there that we thought we were going to have in some cases. So we made those shifts as well. Some of those staffing reductions through attrition on the district office, we reduced 3 FTE, 2 from the HR department, a director of human resources. I'm taking on the majority of those duties, and a talent retention and acquisition specialist. We have 1 senior HR specialist that will take on the majority of the talent retention and acquisition specialist. I'll be working with her on our plan for retention and acquisition moving forward, so it's kind of a team effort in that perspective. And then we did not replace a special ed coordinator that we had at the district office. In terms of teaching positions, I won't go through them all, but you can see there's about 8 positions that we did not fill through attrition. Many of the grade school level ones were enrollment driven, so it wasn't something that increased our class sizes.
And then, did you want questions now?
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
so the ones that aren't grade level, like the world language, the library media specialist, all the rest of them, are they not filled because like we couldn't find people?
Yeah, I can take that. World language was a very last minute resignation, and we were able to make some changes to French and Spanish, and the French teacher coming down. So we made it work for this year. As we look at what those, when kids make course selections for next year, we'll have to look at that in January, February, once those collections are in, to see what we need to do in order to make sure we have appropriate staffing for kids that choose those courses. So that will be one of the things that will be revisited.
Okay. And then like the library media specialists, like we've always had one in each building and now we're short that. Is that like a temporary thing?
Yeah, so the library media specialist, one of the things that we had looked at is, regardless of the size of the building, they had 1.0. And so, when we were down and couldn't find somebody that was fully licensed at the time that we started to look at it, then that's when we looked at the two of our littlest learners ones, and we did a split so that they split that. I think we have to relook at, as we're thinking about building the budget for next year, what do things look like as far as ratios, numbers of sections they teach. As we reconfigure Cottage Grove and Taylor Prairie, that changes those numbers, and so we need to revisit that.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
Susan.
So which schools do not, are there any schools that do not have a library specialist in them right now?
As of today, no.
With
Everybody
this,
has one.
with the attrition?
Is that me? Oh, sorry.
With the planned-
Taylor Prairie and Cottage Grove have 0.5.
And so is that a half-time person in each building or one person that
Yeah,
splits?
one person is part-time at Taylor Prairie, just works part-time. And then the other person from Cottage Grove School then also travels to Granite Ridge and serves as a librarian there. And then there's support that comes from the high school with a library media assistant who's in a program who comes over also.
If you have a person, if you only have a 0.5, so which buildings do we have a 0.5 in?
Taylor Prairie and Cottage Grove School.
And how many students do we have in Cottage Grove School?
About three-ish, 300.
And if they only have a half-time person, what happens to the library during the other half-time?
They still schedule their library hours that like they've always had. So kids come for library lessons and they still get those. And then they have library time that they come into, it's scheduled. And then if the maker space and those things, the teachers always have access to that.
I guess I don't fully understand.
Yeah, I can go through the staffing, like I can send you how everybody's scheduled so that you can see how everyone's needs are met.
That would be great. I just want to make sure because that's something that the community might ask us as board members about, because they'll say, oh, our child or our children always went to the library 3 times a week and they always had an hour, or whatever it was.
None of that has changed.
So none of the access time of the student to the library is changed?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Could you continue, please, Kristen?
Sure.
Thanks.
And then just to give you an idea by category of some of the changes, like I had said, there's some categories such as special ed assistants that we actually still did increase in FTE, but it's just lower than what we actually had approved moving forward. So just an idea of the different categories. And then from a class size perspective, I know there was some concern about reductions impacting class sizes. You can see that we're all within the range and close to our goals in most. I think 3rd grade at Granite Ridge is tiny, a little bit over the goal, but well within the range. So none of the class sizes were impacted by this. From a revenue perspective, you'll see that we had an increase in revenue since the preliminary budget, but that was mainly due to the $7 million loan that we had to recognize. If you look in the all sources, that last line item there, you can see the increase there. Adjustments since preliminary, we had 36 less resident students than we projected, which reduced our 3-year average by 11. That resulted in $152,000 less in revenue from our revenue limit calculation. In addition, we had a $450,000 more that we have to pay in Fund 38 to pay down debt. Now, Fund 38 is under the revenue limit, so any payments that come out of Fund 38 basically is less funding that you can use on operational expenditures. So it's less than Fund 10 basically, and it's mainly due to the the $7 million loan. And then we also had a technology lease that we had to recognize as well as revenue. State aid did increase by 3.8%, but just as a reminder, it's not additional money for the school. It is just property tax relief. On the expenditure side, there are more detailed documents in board packet that I wasn't going to go through, but if anyone had any questions, I'd certainly be happy to answer. But from a high level perspective, you can see that the total expenditures in Fund 10 went down about $100,000 from the preliminary budget, just due to the in and outs that I had already talked about, but lower than the 23-24 year. When you look at the budget by function, you can see the breakdown. The function is how the budget is approved by the board. That's required by DPI, which is why we have that format in the attachment. And you can see the different areas where this is sort of where we spend the money as function. So undifferentiated curriculum is like elementary. It's not differentiated, it's elementary teachers primarily, and all the supplies and things for undifferentiated curriculum. Regular curriculum is 6 through 12 core teachers are in there. And then the other big bucket is business administration. That does include pupil travel. So it's our busing, it's our custodians, it's our utilities. It's not just me. By object, this is the where we spend our money, and you can see those two, the biggest pieces of the pie there, salary and benefits. That totals only about just under 70% of our budget. If you would remove the transfer to special ed, which is the third highest expenditure, that would be closer to 75% of all of our expenditures. So we are a people-rich organization, as you can see from this chart. Overall, in Fund 10, you can see that our revenues exceed expenditures by $5.4 million, but again, that's because of that $7 million loan. So when you reduce that $7 million, we're actually looking at a $1.5 million deficit. So we were able to reduce it a little bit from the preliminary, not quite where we wanted to be, but we'll get there. And so that leaves us with a fund balance of $7.9 million, which was the intent of that $7 million loan. It was really to replenish our fund balance, to help us with cash flow. But if you take that out, we would have ended up with less than $1 million in fund balance. So just wanted to make sure that everyone kind of realizes where we stand. Special education funding. Not a lot of change from the preliminary budget, but did see some changes based on staffing and some tuition payments as we looked deeper into things, but not lower than the preliminary budget, but not significant changes there. And from a revenue standpoint for Fund 27, you can see the biggest piece of that pie is the transfer in. That's from Fund 10 to make sure that we have Fund 27 balanced, because that is a requirement. And the next biggest piece is state sources, which would be our categorical aid for special ed. From an expenditure standpoint, by object, again, similar to Fund 10, the biggest pieces of that pie is salary and benefits. And then the second is that tuition, so it's students that we pay tuition that go to other schools. From an all-fund perspective, we had a reduction in all-fund spending from 23-24 to 24-25. And after you take out the interfund transfer, almost a 2% reduction from 23-24. That resulted in a tax levy. It's still lower than 23-24, a little bit higher than preliminary, and that's mainly, you'll see the community service fund is about $300,000 more, or $250,000 more. That's because last year we actually overspent our Fund 80 budget by $300,000, but we had money in fund balance to cover the expenditures. That was depleted, so we needed to increase the levy in order to cover the expenditures in community service fund. That community service fund covers a lot of the pool. It covers our wrap care. There's a lot of different things in that community service fund. Our SROs are in there. So And then you'll see that our, also the non-referendum debt service fund went up, but overall, if you would add the general fund and the non-referendum fund together, that went down, didn't go up significantly. You'll just see it reduced the Fund 10 general fund property tax. From a mill rate perspective, we're looking at $9.64. It's about 4 cents higher than what we anticipated at the preliminary budget, still lower than the previous year, and that's on an equalized value. So it's not necessarily what you'll see on your taxes because it's equalized value over all the municipalities. But if you take your property value and you divide it by 1,000, multiply it by 9.64 on an equalized basis, that's what your taxes would be.
But it went down because the state aid went up.
Went up, correct.
Okay.
Yep, you got it. In terms of 25-26, like I said, we're going to start with the enrollment forecast in November. That will allow us to develop that 5-year budget forecast that we hope to present at the new F&O committee in December. And then that will lead our work for the budget for January through March, and hopefully a board approval in April and May. That's all I have.
Great, thank you, Kristen. Yeah, I know that there are going to be a number of questions, but before we get into that, I just want to express my gratitude to you, Kristen. I think, you've really hit the ground running on all of this the minute you step foot in our district. You've been you're incredibly knowledgeable, you're incredibly talented at this, and we have a long way to go, but I am grateful for the movement we have been able to make even in this short amount of time. So I just want to acknowledge your work. I know it's a lot of long hours, it's a lot of many days, and we are better off and will be better off as a district for having you here, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. With that, I'll take questions from the board.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Philip.
Kristen, quick question on the mill rate. You mentioned that, it's 9.6446 on an equalized basis, but it's not necessarily how it plays out. Could you just briefly elaborate on why that is? And am I correct that it's because each municipality takes some liberties with how they distribute the tax burden?
Well, each municipality has their own assessed value, and that's how they take, all the levies from all the different sources that they have. So we'll split up our levy as a percentage of our district by all the municipalities that make up our district. That levy amount goes to that municipality and adds to, all of the other levy amounts that they have. So they'll take their assessed value to determine what their mill rate is to distribute those taxes. That's why, it'll be different for every municipality. So that's why we have to do it on an equalized basis. But when people have their tax bills, if they have questions about how that's calculated, I'd be happy to look at it and talk to them about it.
Great, thank you.
Eric.
A couple quick things. One, just confirmation that the ending fund balance is $7,962,383. That includes that $7 million loan.
Yes.
That's balanced.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. We have that money in the bank.
We have money in the bank. Yes,
Okay.
we're able to pay our bills.
The 36 less resident students, do we know where these students are? Is that a population number? Are these students, do we know why that decreased?
That was what we projected. Do we know why? I don't know that we have that answer. Those are the things that I think we need to delve into a little deeper and to see, we get to count the kids that open and roll out to another public school. So our market share that we would potentially not be seeing is any private school students. So we'd want to be able to dig into a little bit more about, how many of our students are attending either homeschool or private school, and why, and react to that.
Yeah. And then following that up, the payment for services, can you tell me a little bit about what those services might include?
Which one?
So I think it was the slide 18, I think. 340 payments for services, 1.4%. And actually, it's Fund 27, but I guess I'm not so concerned about the payment for services as I am for our students open enrolling in other districts. So I might be confusing those two, but that's what I really want to know about.
Sure.
Is our students that are open enrolling in other students and how that affects our district.
So we get to count them on our revenue limit, and then our aid is deducted by an amount that's set by the state every year, and it's just under $9,000. So $9,000 per open enrollment student out is then deducted, and it gets sent to the district that they attend.
And what was the total number on that? Do we have that number?
Total OE out, I don't know that
Yeah.
I have that, but I am doing a enrollment report at the November meeting.
Okay,
where I'll have more
okay,
information
so we'll have it
about-
in
yeah.
November. And just off, Tanya, do we know why students might be leaving our district and open enrolling?
I think that when we looked back, there was a little bit of a bump with post-COVID. I think that some families chose to stay virtual and do online virtual school. So we have that part. The other thing that we know happens is families will move, to another area, and they might stay for a little bit and then move, or vice versa. So there's a little bit of that back and forth that happens. But one of the things we haven't done is really sent out a survey or anything to the families who are choosing to OE out to ask them why. And so that's one thing that we had talked with Katie about doing this winter prior to open enrollment registration time for this coming year, to see if we can find any trends that we could maybe address.
Those are my questions.
Great, thank you, Eric. Other questions? Yes, Janice?
I don't know if right now is the perfect time for this question or not, but first of all, I would just like to say thank you to both Kristen and Tanya for having all this documentation on the web, in board docs where people can get at it and look at it. And I looked through the expense by object, and there's a whole lot going on in there. And since I am not a business manager, I'm a band teacher, retired band teacher, I was wondering if there's anything you wanted to talk about in there that were things that you noticed just that seemed important, or, differences?
Well, I think the biggest differences that you'll see are, some of the one-time expenditures that were removed from the budget. So a lot of construction services, which is 320 object, was something that was one of the biggest changes. We did have those 4 building subs that were reduced. That was another, not reduced, reduced by attrition. That was another large one. So the majority of those, the significant changes, we're just taking a look at, some of those expenditures that were for one-time projects.
Cool. And then quick question about subs, since we're down building subs, are we still doing okay filling sub positions?
Yeah.
How is the new, and I know this isn't exactly the time for that
That's
discussion,
relevant, because
but
we actually spent a lot of money on substitutes in the past, so I think it's a really relevant question.
are we filling, is the new sub
Yep.
company working?
Yep. What we've been mostly doing is using our building-based subs to fill those long-term subs where we know people are going to be out for an extended amount of time, and then trying to use the service that we use for the 2 days here, 2 days there, the last minute thing. We between those two strategies, we've been in the upper 90s for fill rates for teachers. We still struggle with SEAs for substitutes. If we know ahead of time we can get them the morning of when unexpected things happen, we continue to struggle. So we'll probably need to continue. We have a person right from that organization that works with us. Her name's Riley. Working with Riley about, are there other incentives or things that we maybe need to do? Because as we move into the winter months, that doesn't get to be less of a problem.
Right.
So teacher-wise, we're doing really well. SEAs are still a challenge.
90% sounds really impressive, so.
Janice, did you have other questions right now? Okay, great. Susan?
Kristen, so is there anything particular in the expense by object that you think is important for us to know about? And then, there was only, most of these, gave us a good idea of kind of where we were. But there was a cap, 085000499, that was 10E441. I have no idea what, I mean, if somebody asked me about that, I would.
So it's capital objects between $500 and
4,900?
Yeah, 5,000, which is really not a capital project, but,
That helps. Isn't it nice, out of all those that you gave us, I just kind of said, what? Okay. Are there any that you particularly want us to see or notice?
well, I mean, the biggest expense is salary and benefits, so those are always things to take a look at, because it, impacts the district as a whole. I think the other thing that I would point out is textbooks. You'll see some fluctuations there because it depends on curriculum renewal, and so that was something that was reduced. And then there was some questions that we had about custodian salaries and why it looked like there was an increase. We really had, I think, the previous year, some expenditure or some staff that were positions that weren't filled. And so 1.8 is what staff we have that we anticipate spending for 24-25. So it's not really an increase in numbers. It just happens to be that, they're an hourly group, and so we pay for the work that they do, and we had some open positions last year. The 107 is custodian extra pay. That's overtime, and that really is dependent upon the weather, because if we have a lot of snow, we're going to have a lot of overtime. So, and we have, obviously overtime for co-curricular activities on the weekends and things like that. Extra pay for certified staff has increased since 22-23 pretty significantly. So that's something that we'll want to look at as we talk about, trying to pay our teachers competitively. We pay about $1 million in certified staff extra pay, and so just have to talk about where we want to put the resources that we do have. I did talk about retirement a bit. That's 218. That is the increase there. You'll see is because we used forfeitures in 23-24 and not expenditures. The miscellaneous benefits 293. That is support staff sick day payout at retirement. Computer tech rental 322. That's recording the value of the lease. And then we get a revenue on the other side. So it looks like an expense, but it's really just recording the actual lease itself, and then we have lease payments underneath it. Our telephone expenditures went up. We invested in a go-to telephone system that allows phone calls from your desk to go to your phone, and you can send text so that you don't have to use your phone to text. So that investment was made in 23-24. A lot of software investments that we've made over the course of the years. One of the questions was paper, 417. That's a combination of building budgets. So they submit their budgets, what they think they're going to spend, and then district expenditures. So in 22-23, the budget was $72,000, and we only spent 13. I don't know why. I don't know if it was coded somewhere else. That's a really, strange number. And then, we spent $41,000 in 23-24, but budgeted 63. So I think it's a combination of what our historical budget has been, what we've spent, and what the schools requested to land at 52,000. But, is that an area that we can look at reducing? Absolutely. The capital lease principal 678, that is the lease annual payments for our computers, and 682 is our short-term borrowing costs. So that gives you an idea of Fund 10. And then in Fund 27, our, thank you, our 103 is our para pay. That has increased because we've increased SEAs over the years due to student needs. And the 218 is, again, that retirement payment. 370 is tuition. And we had some questions on Fund 80. We did finally hire a head lifeguard. That position wasn't replaced. I think if you look before COVID happened, we had much more expenditures in that, and that position just wasn't filled, and we finally filled it. That should result in additional revenues from lessons and people using the pool. The same with pool staff, they're hourly staff, and we anticipate more staff to be back closer to the 22, 23 levels. And then 141 is wrap care staff and just the staff that we need for the children that participate in wrap care. So that's some highlights.
That's great, thank you.
Philip?
So Kristen answered my questions before I asked them, because that
Sorry.
was the list
I
that
thought
I
it was a
sent
good
her.
idea,
Yeah.
good opportunity
Yeah,
to
it was
share.
a great
No,
I
that was-
stole his.
That was great.
Yeah.
I was just looking at my list, and I'm like, that's another one,
Yeah.
that's another
Yeah.
one. So thank you for the explanation on all of those. When I looked through the objects prior to the meeting and, did some math on the percentage increases, particularly, looking at 22, 23 to now, because of all the discussion around last year's budget obviously not being good, right? It was presented to us as balanced, it wasn't balanced. And so I was really interested to see which things, going back a couple of years, had really leapt, significantly. Telephone is a great example, right? Spending $50,000 2 years ago and spending $187,000 now jumped out at me as interesting. And so that, I appreciate the explanation on each of these. And I imagine these categories too are things that we'll dig into to some degree too on the F&O committee as we move forward to try to make sure that we're being efficient and being targeted with what we're doing with these dollars.
Another thing that's important to mention is that we changed our account structure from 22, 23 to 23, 24. So that's why it's not easy to answer the question of why did our certified extra pay go up, $300,000, because in 22, 23 we use different account numbers, so you can't compare. So that's going to take me a little bit to get you an answer on that one.
Yeah, and I noticed too with like 27E370, the non-government agency, it looked like a similar thing where we had recorded that in different buckets earlier, and then it switched, and it still went up, but yeah, okay.
Peter?
Those changes are dictated by the DPI, correct?
Yes, so in 22, 23, we recorded, we used a location for the type of pay. So instead of having like our teachers coded to the different buildings, we all coded them to location 757. And we were forced to make that change in 23, 24 because we now have to report, we have to do a school-based reporting to the DPI for each individual school. So we have to show how much we invest in each individual school so that we're make sure that we're equally distributing our funding. And so we had to change those accounts. So all the teachers were recorded at location 757 in 22, 23, and now they're in their individual buildings. So a lot of that had to do with that change. Or, sometimes DPI says, instead of using object 370 to record software, we want you to put it in 480, and then you have to change it, and it looks weird from year to year, but I'm not sure what the rationale is behind that, but I'm sure some gap reason.
I get these issues because we have a format, that ends up putting your salary and a custodial salary and a bus in the same wedge of this pie.
Yes.
And it does make it difficult for the public
Right.
to understand. And the public should understand that this is the format we're required to report to the API to do our funding. This is budgeting, and asking you to do a separate budget that makes something else is just, it's a difficult task. But it is, I think, making some of these numbers a little more transparent to the public is something that I've been concerned about for a while. And maybe it's something that we can talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, it would be a healthy conversation in F&O just to understand what would be most helpful. Because, I can run the numbers any way you want to see them. It's just a matter of
Time.
Yeah, well, and just how you want to. I mean, what is most helpful?
Right.
Is
Right.
By function, by object, but how detailed do you want to be? But there is a document called the Wisconsin Uniform Financial Accounting Record, the WUFR, that dictates all of this. So there is a method behind the
In fact, I've
madness
got
that
it
we-
loaded right now because I was looking up 250 while you were talking
Oh,
about
good,
it. So thank you but thank you, and yes, you did answer most of the questions I had while we were going through this. And just the things I'd like to note is one is that issue of how we have to report it. And there's this funny thing of why we report inter-fund transfers. It makes our budget looks bigger than it is, kind of thing. when it's really, and, you know, and it does look like that's not money spent on salaries. Well, it turns out 86% of that money goes to, you know, is spent on salaries in special ed. Yeah, so, thank you.
Yeah, one follow-up I was gonna ask, and I realize this may be something that we just need to work on, so there may not be an answer today, but when we, you know, look at the actual throughput of money each month where we have the consent agenda with the you know, vouchers payable, it doesn't appear that we have that tied to buckets at that point or to objects at that point. Is that true, or does it happen at a later point, or is that part of the challenge of reconciling this stuff, or?
No, it's really just a listing of, you know, checks and ACHs and payroll that goes out, but I don't know that there's not a woofer report in addition to that. So I think either at the board or the F&O committee, we'll have to talk about what that looks like on a monthly basis of reporting and what's helpful.
But I'm assuming when those are entered, there is a number associated with those. An
Oh,
account,
yes,
account
yes,
location.
absolutely.
I'm
So
sorry.
that's what
We
I
don't
was getting
just-
at. I was trying to.
It's just not on that report.
Yeah, because I was thinking if there's a way to include that,
Oh,
so
sure.
that when we look at the budget, and it'd be much easier, I think, monthly to say, cool, we expected to spend this, and then we spent this much of that this month.
Sure.
It'd be helpful to track, but I think that's something we can talk about in the committee
Yeah.
too.
There's only several thousand account numbers, so.
That was really my point, you know, we had a conversation about what do we attach that gets more of a detailed budget in the DPI format?
Mhm.
Because totally understand that when you just look at that, it's not super user friendly.
Right.
And so, and then what we did put together, like, it ends up being 30 pages. But the other one that we had, I think, was 140 pages. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, maybe scale that back a bit. So I think it's going to take us a little time as so working with you as a board about what level makes sense and at what meeting. So,
Would it be easy to attach some of that stuff as Excel documents in addition to the PDFs?
Sure, I could.
Yeah, or even if you wanted to put that in administrative, put the PDF in public, and for any reason, just because I think from a consumption standpoint, if it was in Excel, it'd be a lot easier to
Yeah, 'cause we
crunch it
filter
and,
it. Sure.
yeah,
And filter through
filter
it.
it and search it and
Yeah.
Yeah.
sort it and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I probably would put it in administrative content,
Yeah.
just because, you know,
You
you
don't
want
want it to be
someone to
editable.
like edit it and,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
and say, this is it.
Yeah. No, understood. I get why it's in PDF today, but in addition, that'd be, I think, helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I have a couple of questions for you, Kristen. So for 10E 382, is that our open enrollment out number? That payment to Wisconsin school districts, 1.5
Yes.
million? Okay. Can you remind me what our revenues were for open enrollment? I'm just like wondering what the net is on open enrollment.
I can. We're ahead in open enrollment. We're
Okay.
way ahead. I just don't have that at the,
Yeah, just,
too many tabs open.
because open enrollment was one of those major areas in terms of just not budgeting properly for open enrollment
The
out. so-
expense, yep,
Mhm.
definitely.
If I could comment in, we talked briefly about enrollment overall. I think some of what we're seeing, at the very least, some of what we're seeing is post-COVID relocation. There was a lot of dislocation with COVID, and for example, there were a lot of kids for a while in Monona. There was some increase in enrollment that was sort of unanticipated at the time. And I think we're getting some of that is straightening out.
Yeah,
So I think some of this just natural stuff going
Yeah.
on.
that makes sense to me.
I'm not finding the exact numbers, but I can get it to you.
Okay,
But
yeah.
we are definitely well
Yeah,
over.
that's great,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, if you could get that to me, just send it
Yeah.
me in an email, I copy the board. The other question I had was around the item right under that, 386. So I know that a lot of our contracted services come through CISA, like especially for like, you know, hard, low incidence populations, for example. So I'm kind of curious what accounts for the difference between last year's budget and this year's budget in regards to CISA? For Fund 10, 386 payment to CISA, it was,
What do you say, number 386?
yep, 386 under Fund 10.
So
I guess the motive for my question is, did we do any service reduction that's student impactful?
It's typically their base contract and any seats that we would have, so it would be whatever the contract came back at, so we'd have to look at what the CISA contract
So
actually says.
I can answer that. It wasn't, what we have in here really isn't services for kids. It was joining consortiums
Got it.
through CISA for CTE. I think there was a reading one.
Yep.
There were some relatively costly
Yeah.
PD type of organizational things that we pulled back on some of them
Great.
because we had different avenues to get that.
Yep.
There was a heavy fee for
So this is-
service.
Yeah, part of like
For
the
PD.
travel and conference reduction essentially,
Yes.
and not the direct service reduction.
Yes.
Great.
Correct.
Great. I have one other question around Fund 80, because you had referenced it being over budget. I think it was over budget in previous budgets as well. I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on kind of moving forward. All of these things need to be addressed, but specifically with Fund 80, you know, what are your thoughts moving forward in terms of how we can not get in a position where we're overspending in Fund 80?
Well, first, budgeting accurately, as
Well, you know.
accurately as you can.
Apply all.
Right, yeah. But there was one of the expenditures was a bill that we hadn't paid in a previous year for an SRO. So it was, inflated in 23, 24. So I noticed that, but it's definitely something that I think we need to do a deeper dive into and split out sort of the aquatic center, the expenditures versus the revenues.
Mhm.
They're all kind of jumbled together at this point, and the wrap
Correct.
care and so there's definitely some work that we can do there.
Do you have a sense right now, related to Fund 80 specifically, where we are overspending and undergenerating?
I have to look at it more in depth. I
Okay.
haven't gone that deep into it. It's just right now, these are the expenditures we're kind of obligated to.
Yeah.
So this is sort of what it is now, but we definitely need to look at,
Okay.
like, where are we over and,
Yeah, when you get there for F&O, Peter, I'd be real curious for that discussion, and specifically around wrap care, which I feel like is a great community benefit, particularly with daycares closing in Cottage Grove. And I can recognize that maybe from an expenditure revenue ratio, it's a challenge, so I just kind of be curious about how that conversation goes.
Yeah, I believe you're not allowed to maintain a fund balance in Fund 80, correct?
you can.
You can? Okay. Whatever, I mean, part of what happened last year was that we deliberately spent down the fund, that there was a balance that we just deliberately spent down,
Yes.
rather than it being
Yeah.
overextended.
Yeah.
It's just, a matter of balancing that budget, but, yeah, there's a lot of things. And the community service fund actually has expanded quite a bit in the past, since I've been here 10 years or so. It's
Yes.
been growing fairly healthy. Part of that is there's, if you can fairly put expenditures in there, they're outside of
It's
the
outside the
revenue
limit.
limit, but we have to be very careful when we do that,
Right.
that we are actually supporting the community. For example, the largest expenditure in there is the $325,000, which is the SRO
Mhm.
pavements. We have to make sure that that's a community service and not just a service to the school when we do that, because that's the point of the community service fund.
Yeah.
Our pool, we support the public, comes in and swims.
Mhm.
That's why that's lifeguards in the community service fund. It's a dual purpose, dual use.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Rochelle?
Well, this maybe I passed the time to ask, but with the wraparound care, do we have wraparound care both in both communities, or I think it's only not at Winnequa, the city does some care,
Yep.
right?
So Parks and Rec, that's why they rent Maywood, and they do wrap care there. And then we run one at wrap care only at Taylor Prairie for the other half of 4K. And then the Y does after-school care at Cottage Grove School. So we'll have to have a conversation about what that looks like with the reconfiguration, because now we'll have 4K in both buildings. So that's something that we'll need to bring into F&O and have those conversations.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, I would entertain a motion, please. I1.
I move approval of the 2024-2025 budget as presented.
Oh.
And I do have this on. Do you want me to do it again?
Mhm.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I move approval of the 2024-2025 budget as presented.
I'll second that.
Great, any further discussion? Okay, we'll do roll call vote. Rochelle?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Philip?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Janice?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Elizabeth, aye. Ayes have it, motion carries. Next action item is the 2024-2025 tax levy and mill rate.
Thank you. So this is exactly what I presented in the budget. We are proposing a tax levy of $33,286,881.
Just to clarify, is the primary explanation for why it is decreased slightly because of the increase in state aid?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that was clear, that we're taxing just ever so slightly less to the community because state aid has gone up. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to note, we approve the tax levy, not the mill rate, even though the document says mill rate. The mill rate is determined by taking equalized value and dividing that number of dollars across the property based on its value. So, and our levy is going down a little bit because of the increase in aid. That can translate to an increase or decrease in the mill rate based on property values. If our levy is the same and the property values have increased by 10%, then everybody will see a 10% decrease in the levy. Just the way it works. We don't approve a mill rate, we don't set the mill rate, we just approve a dollar amount for the levy. And I'd move approval of the 2024-2025 tax levy as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Just curious, what happens if you don't approve it? Like, it doesn't really do anything, right?
It does.
It would
I
just-
mean, yeah.
It would be a
It does.
problem.
Yeah.
But there's no real control over,
Yeah, there
set,
is.
So, it's.
Well, you as a board are required by statute to
Right.
set a levy to cover the expenditures,
Expenditures.
so you wouldn't be doing your
Right.
job. I mean, there are things you could change if, there were,
I guess that's probably more of the question I should ask, is like, what is the board
Your mic's
at
off,
liberty
Eric.
to change? If it would be anything? What would the board be able to change in a tax
so
levy?
you could say, reduce the Fund 10 levy by $7 million because you have a $7 million fund balance.
Got it. Okay.
But please don't do that.
No, no,
The state sets a maximum. We can we need to approve a levy, we just can't be over that amount. And if we don't approve it, we don't get it, right?
Yeah.
So,
So we do approve it.
no, don't tell me what to do.
Any further discussion? All right, let's do a roll call vote. Let's start on this side, just for something different. Susan?
What?
We're doing a roll call vote.
Oh, aye. Sorry,
Janice?
you guys.
Aye.
And I started over there just to make it a change. Eric?
Make sure we're
Aye.
all here.
Philip?
Aye.
Peter? Rochelle?
Aye.
Elizabeth, aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. All right, our last item was the item that was pulled out of the consent agenda, which is early college credit program and Start College Now requests.
Yes, so two programs exist in the state of Wisconsin. One's early college credit, and that allows high school students to take one or more course at an institution of higher education for high school credit and or college credit. So that would be your dual credit or just straight up college credit if they were doing that. In addition, Start College Now is a program that allows juniors and seniors to take high school courses, one or more of them, through the technical college situation. So what that means is for each semester, we should be bringing forward to you the list of courses that students are requesting to take. So if you open that attachment, you'll see the list of courses that students are requesting to take, that they would take at we pay for. So a couple things to note. Program's been in existence for quite a long time. Students often will request multiple courses because they get the seats that are not being taken by enrolled students at those institutions. They kind of get what's left. So like right now, these are for spring, so they put in their request, and then they usually don't find out until late December, January if they get in. So many of them will request many courses. So what we'll get better at doing is then bringing you the end of the year report that says, here's what actually was taken and here's what it actually cost.
Yep.
So they can't take classes that we have an equivalent to. So it really is an opportunity for students to extend their career pathways earlier. So you'll see many things on there like the that are in the area of nursing, just different career paths that are things that students are interested in. Some of them were automotives, a lot of written communication, college success, different classes that are going to get students ready for post-secondary college also.
Great, thank you. Yes.
We got a presentation of this at TLNE, and I think it's a really nice program and a great opportunity for our students to be able to continue their learning beyond what maybe our brick and mortar can offer, but keep them on a good path.
Yeah, Peter.
And same comment, I think it looks like we need to offer college and career readiness. That's the most popular on this list.
Janice.
I really appreciate seeing this list. I think it's really interesting to see what students are interested in learning and the wide variety of things that are on the list. It's really cool.
Question.
Yeah, Philip.
What is the rough cost to the district for this?
Last year, I think we paid $70,000 to other institutions.
Got it.
And just for the record, we have 18 students who've requested
Yes.
to.
For this semester, for the coming semester for spring.
Yeah, on this list.
Got it.
Rochelle, did you have a question?
Well, I was going to say, I think too, like you had suggested, looking at those common classes that what it would maybe take to get a teacher that's or trained and can offer a college level course, like as an AP, I'm assuming is what it would have to be to kind of be similar, right?
Well, we can offer them in-house through dual credit. So we do offer some classes already that are dual credit, and we have instructors right on site. Typically, they're in the area of math, a little bit in English language arts. So those credits either get offered, whatever the governing body that will allow the teacher to say, like, you have enough master's credentials to be able to teach this as a college level course. So we have some math classes, some of those things. Those are the most popular. Then you're always going to get kids that have some really unique interests, or maybe things that there's not enough of them. So we always balance between, is there enough kids where we could either get the instructor to come to us, or get our own staff certified to be able to teach it. So it's that sweet balance.
Thank you. Eric.
Who makes a decision on what's accepted and denied?
So the school counselors sit down and you go through our handbook to see if you've exhausted our own course sequence, and then this would be the next area, or if we don't offer anything in that sequence.
The only class on here that I have a question about is the religious one.
Yeah,
I'm
same.
wondering why that was accepted. I don't know if you know the answer to that.
What line?
It's been there twice. It's 5, number 2 on our course name, and it's under there for a later student too. I guess expanding on that, a question that I had was, are we obligated to say yes to any requests that meet those criteria?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so it's not like we can say, well, we don't offer this, but it's not relevant to our curriculum or whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
Is there any limit to the number of courses? I see, like, for example, student 16 maybe has 5 that are accepted. I know you said they probably won't get them all, but let's say they did, right? Let's say there was a seat open and all 5 of them.
Yep.
Are they effectively spending, much of a day, if not a whole day, off campus?
Typically not, unless they are a student who really doubled up on classes early on, and have a lot of their credits for graduation already done, and maybe they're spending their senior year getting their freshman year of college done.
Okay.
This is a program that for some students, if they're very organized about it, will start college as a sophomore, or maybe even a second semester sophomore.
Gotcha.
Or, maybe even just a couple classes.
Mhm.
So,
Got it.
I had one other question, which is, do we pay, like standard tuition rates for these, or is it subsidized because of the program?
there's a little bit of subsidized perspective, but not a lot.
Mostly we're, okay.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Can I get a motion, please?
Motion's not written in because this was in consent prior.
Yep.
Can I get a motion to approve the early college credit program and Start College Now requests as presented?
I make a motion to approve that.
I'll second it.
Great, any further discussion?
No, I don't know if you can get back to me about the religious thing. You don't have to do it now, but,
I already looked it up.
oh, okay.
It's about how different religions handle illness in healthcare.
Okay, so that's
in
why the
humanities.
determination, okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I just have one more question. Like, do students have to apply and get accepted into these colleges in order to take these classes, or no? Like, how does that work?
Yes, there's
Yeah.
a application process that they fill out along with their course request. And so universities have early college credit departments that really, there's usually one person in the whole university who works with the counselors and the kind of the point person at each high school to be the conduit to that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we'll do a voice vote on this one. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. All right, that brings us down to informational items, discussion by exception only around committees. So we had 3 committees since we last met: personnel, policy, and TLE. So curious if anyone wants to give any updates.
Eric, do you want me to just go first quickly on the teacher side of personnel? So, we met with the teacher unit on Monday of this week, and had a really productive meeting. Got through a lot of handbook items, some positive discussion, and there will be some handbook change recommendations brought to the board at the November meeting that came out of that discussion. We also attempted to achieve a TA in bargaining, got close but didn't quite get there, so that's still hanging out there, and I believe there's more to come. Eric has taken over that at this point, so I'm stepping out officially, which I know was mentioned earlier. I'll turn it over to Eric to talk about.
Yeah, we had a meet and confer meeting with the building services and administrative assistants and paraprofessionals. Educational assistants, sorry. That was on the 21st, and we have another one scheduled, I think, on the 11th. As far as the contracts, that's still under some discussion, so we'll hopefully have more to report on that at the next board meeting.
Great, thank you. Thanks for your service on that committee, Philip, and thanks for hopping in on it, Eric. Susan, did you want to say anything about policy?
Yes, the policy committee met 7:30 on Monday morning. And we are continuing to work through the Neola packet, and we're making major progress. And we have another meeting scheduled, and we'll be bringing first read to you in November.
Great, thank you. And then Rochelle, did you have anything you wanted to share around TLE?
I will just say we had a meeting on October 15th. We covered a lot of things, as we have done the last meeting as well. We talked about, got an update on our mental health in the district and some of the programs that are utilized by the district in regards to that. Also on Next Path, which I'm excited to hear how that works as we incorporate it more throughout this district. And then we got to hear about the college and AP classes, so we got to have a lot of nice information shared with us. I did do interviews for our community members, and I will be getting out letters hopefully in the next few days for the people who will be joining us as we move forward.
Great. Yes.
I just want to comment, I just want to thank you, Rochelle, and comment on how great these meetings are to really understand the importance. We can talk about the budget, but what's really important in the district and what's going on. It's important for the board to hear and see that. I encourage people to come, those are public meetings, to come to those meetings. I also encourage the public to keep an eye on those TLE committee agendas well, it's all interesting.
Yeah.
If you want to really understand how this district works and to pay attention to that. That's where, it's really
It's the heart and soul.
It's
of
the heart and soul.
the
It's where
mission.
the important stuff is going on, and it's a good place. It's having our eyes on that is very important.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Yes. Susan?
Yeah, I would also repeat what Peter has just stated. And again, part of that started as the committee was evolving, as you chaired that committee. And again, any time that I could watch or sit in, the presentations are absolutely excellent. And then the questions from the committee are also very, very good board questions. And to have that being continued, and actually to be a committee member is really helpful because you can participate and ask questions. And do we know when the new members will be starting?
Yeah, it would be for the December meeting.
December meeting, okay. Thank you.
Great. All right, last item is our superintendent report.
Yes, so,
Can I
Yes,
Just-
Susan.
for the finance committee, do we have an idea when that is going to start and when?
We'll have a meeting next month.
In when is that planned?
I don't have a schedule yet for it, but we'll start it next month.
Okay. I know, I did get a little bit of feedback, particularly for that committee, not being anything in Peter's control, but there were people outside, kind of in the district, that were interested in that committee, and I know that it was difficult for them to see the information about filling out the application. So we should just think about that in the future. I don't know how you put that out. And my impression is that there was an individual that tried to reach you, and it may have been when you were in Morocco, and hadn't heard back.
Yeah, I was out of town. That's the one individual I'm aware of, and I've been in contact with that person, so.
yeah, we made sure that it was in several areas and not just through the district website or through the email, so.
That's great. Well, and again, so,
So Susan, we're not agendized to talk about F&O, so I'm gonna move us on. But if you have additional questions, I encourage you to reach out to Peter.
Yeah.
And ask about
Okay.
kind of the status of that committee.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, superintendent's report.
Okay, as we have gotten the school year off the ground, we have moved forward with the standing committees I've assigned a director or assistant superintendent to each one of those committees to make sure that they are having those agenda and planning meetings with the chairperson. So the teaching and learning team, which would be Lisa Hype and Krista Foster, will be working directly with Rochelle. Kristen will continue to work with personnel and as finance and operation, and then I'll keep policy. We just really want to have that opportunity for the board members to work directly with the people that's their job, to oversee that area of the organization, and for them to have that opportunity to lead in that way also.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
And then, starting next week, Kristen will be holding about 25-ish minute voluntary meetings to be able to show and talk with our staff members about what the budget information we went through tonight, and then more importantly, I think, begin to foreshadow what that November, starting to build that budget process through spring. I think people know that, you know, we still have a deficit. We're gonna have to continue to build our fund balance, pay the interest on the loan. And so wondering, you know, really what does that process look like? So her being able to outline that and talk about, you know, building a 5-year budget projection and how enrollment drives that, just get more information in the hands of our employees so that they feel a little more informed and have a better level of understanding of just the complexity of it and how it works and when they can expect to see what. So she'll start doing those next week with Katie. So.
Yeah, Peter.
And the question was asked earlier, what's our open enrollment? And there it is on that page.
Yeah, I was
for
gonna
us.
ask, I have an image, but it's broken on mine.
Oh, it says we have
Yeah.
524 open in and 153 open out.
Yes. And so the other image in there, I don't know why it's in there because it's not the verified one, so I didn't want to make them public. But it's our initial third Friday count of per building. Kristen's going to do a enrollment update at the next board meeting, so on the 13th, and walk through all of that information with all the official numbers that are public.
Quick question.
Yeah, Janice.
Do you know when she's doing the meetings? Is it like during lunch? Is it like after school?
Right after school. Some of them will be able to hit the faculty meeting, some of them we won't, so we'll have to do it at like 3:15. They're voluntary. They'll probably most likely start when it's still the contracted day. I don't know if we'll finish by then, but it's pretty timely, and so just working with the building principals to get those on the docket so that you know, she's been so busy working on the budget, she hasn't spent a ton of time in the buildings yet, and so just really an opportunity for people to also meet her and hear from her and just educate everyone about how we'll move forward from a process perspective. So, yeah.
So we don't have those numbers right now, the count numbers per school?
Yeah, it should be under your executive.
No,
Yours not showing up?
Yeah,
doesn't show
yeah, it doesn't show up
Okay.
on mine either.
I'll get them to you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, that's
Do
all.
we,
Okay. Yes,
Okay.
Susan.
do we have any teams heading toward sectionals or state? I just know the football team is,
Yeah, the football
they
team will
want
go to
you to
Rice
come see
Lake
them on Friday.
on Friday in Rice Lake. Yeah. And then I know the girls cross country team.
Yeah.
And tennis. We still have some students that are going further along in tennis.
Yes,
So,
and in fact, one of our students was on the major picture in the Herald,
yes,
and
Lena.
that would be our student rep for the board.
Great. Anything else? All right, so the future meeting dates are in there. There's personnel on the 11th at 4:30, another personnel on the 11th at 6. That's for administrative assistants and EAs, and then building and services after that. Policy will meet on November 13th. Personnel will meet again around certified staff on the 18th. TLE will meet on the 19th at 4, and then personnel committee will meet again on December 2nd at 4:30 if necessary. Anything else that we need to, and then our standing, our next board meeting's not on there, but that's
Yeah, what is that?
November 13th is our next board meeting. So it'll be 7 o'clock unless we have closed session business, and then we'll do 6. Oh, there is closed session, so we will be meeting at 6, and we'll be back in Monona for that one, I believe, correct?
Mhm.
Great. It was nice to be out in Cottage Grove today.
Yeah.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
I move we adjourn.
I will second that.
Okay, voice vote, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries, meeting is adjourned at 8:27. Thank you, everybody.
Philip, were you gonna say second and I beat you?
I hope so.
It works good out here. I think. Do you?
I didn't have a problem with it, I didn't like the weather.
So